Today, CNBC is reporting that Donald Trump's war has triggered the largest oil supply disruption in history, with crude prices surging about 40% since the U.S. and Israel attacked Iran. Donald Trump said last week that the United States would provide military escorts and war insurance, in effect, to oil tankers facing potential missile strikes and mines in the Strait of Hormuz. Retired Navy Admiral William McRaven, who oversaw the raid that killed Osama bin Laden, told the New York Times it could take more than a month to get ships and other military equipment to the area to demine the strait. Even then, many boats may not want to take the risk of navigating the waterway. Joining us now is Congressman Adam Smith of the state of Washington. He is the top Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee. And Congressman, I know that your state suffered one of the losses in this last Air Force accident. Captain Ariana Savino is from Covington, Washington. I noted that when I was reading about her today.
Yeah, no, it's just close to my district down in South King County. And yes, one of 13 service members who have lost their lives. Now estimates are there are over 200 casualties. So the cost of this war is very clear. What we are struggling with is the benefit and where this will ultimately lead us to once Donald Trump, as he has famously said, feels it in his bones to stop the war. That lack of a strategic plan is deeply troubling in light of the very, very human costs that we have seen.
Can you comment on Donald Trump's refusal to comment on the death of Captain Savino or anyone else on that plane?
Well, one of the more troubling aspects of Donald Trump, and believe me, there are many, he doesn't think in terms of consequences. You see this in the way he acts. He does what he does and then just continues. There's no focus on what are the consequences of my actions. That's a huge problem, well, I think for any human being, but certainly for someone with the power and responsibility of the president of the United States. I mean, I'm just a member of Congress, but I think all the time about the votes I take. I think about what I say. I think about the policies that I advocate for and how are they going to impact people. Now, I don't let that paralyze me or stop me from acting, but it's part of the responsibility of the job. You've seen how Trump talks. He doesn't give a second thought to it, and he doesn't want to be bothered by it. He pretends that it's not there. And certainly that's troubling on a human level to see a leader setting that example for the people of this country. But from a policy perspective, it's a major problem because he's not thinking through the cost benefit of the policies he's implementing. He's not thinking through the consequences. If you can't face the responsibility of your actions and accept them, then you're making decisions that are not based on reality.
We have more video evidence, actually, of the way Donald Trump thinks about death. And this is today. He was talking about a Republican member of the House who had a grave illness, who had apparently the possibility of looming death, but recovered from surgery and is fine. And let's just listen to the way Donald Trump talked about that.
Death is very bad when you're the speaker and you have a majority of 2 or 3.
That was it. Donald Trump then said, again, death is bad. And he said, I needed his vote. That's what was important to Donald Trump about this House member, Republican House member, whose life was threatened but then recovered after surgery. That's the person who's running this war. Death is bad, not sad. It's just bad because it's some kind of political problem for him.
Yeah, I mean, that cruel indifference to humanity, I mean, it bleeds us into all different policies. I mean, gosh, you see it in the ICE enforcement, 2 people killed, many others, the use of violence by ICE escalating and complete indifference from people. They lie about what happened. Look, humanity is part of being an effective leader. And I think it's very, very clear that President Trump doesn't have that. I mean, going all the way back to his famous quote about how people who join the military are suckers and losers. That lack of values, that lack of humanity, again, it is a disgusting example for all of us trying to get along with each other. But it also pushes forward policies that are indifferent to human suffering. And that should be at least part of the equation and an appreciation for what it means as a human being, not how it impacts your own personal calculus.
If the Democrats win the House of Representatives, as they appear on track to do in this election, you'd become chairman of the Armed Services Committee. If that were today, what would be different going forward with Donald Trump's war?
Yeah, there'd be a lot more oversight, and there would be certainly a focus on the appropriations process. But a huge part of this is holding them accountable. I mean, it is remarkable that, this war has been going on for 2.5 weeks now. There has been no public hearings. There has been no effort by this Congress, led by the Republicans, to have the administration come in and explain itself, explain how they got into it and where they're going. And that lack of accountability leads to this sort of, no consequences approach. That is a big part of what Congress is supposed to do, is exercise that oversight, hold the administration accountable, make them explain themselves. And part of that is to make them sort of actually implement a policy that can work. Now, I don't want to overstate this. The president of the United States has an enormous amount of power. He has the power to ignore Congress, as his president certainly does, but at least shining a light on it and using our power as a legislative branch to exercise oversight, it can help, and it can move us in a different direction. And I hope we get that opportunity.
Congressman Adam Smith, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Lawrence.